60,000 years ago, we were not alone. Across the earth walked cousins of our species, Neanderthals in the cold valleys of Europe, Denisovans hidden deep in Asia, the mysterious hobbits of Indonesia, and others now lost to time. But today, when we look around, there is only us, only Homo sapiens. Why? Why did every other human species vanish while we survived? Imagine the Earth 60,000 years ago. If you stood on a grassy plain in Europe, you might see campfires glowing in the distance, but they weren't ours. They belonged to Neanderthals. Stocky, powerful, adapted to the cold. Hunters who brought down mammoths with wooden spears. Travel east into the mountains of Siberia, and you would find another kind of human, Denisovans. We know little of their faces, but their genetic fingerprints tell us they thrived where oxygen thins and cold bites. Far away, on an isolated island in Indonesia, lived a people so small that scientists call them hobbits, Homo floresiensis. Barely a meter tall, yet skilled enough to survive on meager resources, sharing their land with giant lizards and strange birds. And these weren't the only ones. Some evidence suggests that still other branches of humanity existed, species whose names we may never know, lost to time, erased without a trace. For a moment in history, Earth was not ruled by one kind of human, but many. A family tree with wide, tangled branches, each adapted to its own corner of the world, each shaped by thousands of generations of survival. And yet, when you look around today, every branch but one has snapped. Only we remain, Homo sapiens. The mystery is sharp, almost haunting. How could so many kinds of humans vanish, leaving only one behind? Did nature favor us? Did chance? Or did we play a hand in their disappearance? On the surface, we weren't so different from our cousins. Neanderthals had brains even larger than ours. Their bodies were strong, their senses sharp. If survival was a contest of raw intelligence or brute strength, they should have outlasted us. But our advantage wasn't about size, it was about connection. Inside the Homo sapiens brain, pathways of imagination and language were more deeply woven. That gave us something no other human had mastered, the ability to think symbolically. We could imagine what wasn't there. We could invent ideas, share stories, and pass knowledge forward through generations. Think of the first time one of our ancestors picked up red ochre and painted animals onto a cave wall. That was more than art. It was communication. It told others what had been hunted, where the animals roamed, or perhaps carried meaning we can't fully decode. Carved figurines, bone flutes, patterns etched into stone. These weren't just decorations. They were proof that we could carry abstract ideas in our minds, then give them form for others to see. And stories? They were our greatest tool. Around the fire, a hunter could warn others about dangerous cliffs, describe the movement of the herds, or even weave myths that bound the group together with shared beliefs. Where Neanderthals relied on memory and experience, we built culture, a living archive of survival strategies, inventions, and ideas that outlasted any single person. Culture meant that knowledge was no longer fragile, tied to one lifetime. It could flow across generations, across vast distances, across entire networks of people. And in a world where survival depended on learning fast, culture became our shield, our sword, and our greatest inheritance. Survival is never just about the individual, it's about the group. And here, Homo sapiens played a very different game from our cousins. Neanderthals lived in small, close-knit bands, perhaps 20-30 individuals at most. They hunted together, cared for their sick, and buried their dead. But their groups were isolated. If disaster struck, if a hunt failed, if disease spread, there were few others to turn to. We, on the other hand, built wider circles. A Homo sapiens band might number 40, 50, even more. And crucially, those groups did not stand alone. They connected, through alliances, through trade, through shared rituals. Imagine one tribe meeting another on the plains. Weapons could have been raised, but often something else happened. Shells from the sea might be traded for obsidian from the mountains. Songs and stories could be exchanged, carrying knowledge far beyond the horizon. These networks meant resilience. If drought withered the grasslands in one valley, help might come from allies in another. If food grew scarce, new hunting grounds could be discovered through shared information. But it was more than survival. Cooperation fostered trust among strangers, something no other human species is known to have achieved at the same scale. Trust is invisible, yet it changes everything. It allows hundreds, even thousands, to work together without breaking apart. This ability to form connections beyond blood, to build networks that stretched across landscapes, was like weaving a safety net beneath our species. When the world shook, that net held. For others, alone and isolated, there was no such protection. Tools have always been the great equalizer. A sharp edge can turn fragile hands into the jaws of a predator. A fire-hardened spear can pierce the hide of a mammoth. But what separated us from the rest of our human cousins was not the possession of tools. It was the pace of change. Neanderthals crafted excellent weapons. Their stone points were sturdy, effective, deadly. But their designs barely shifted for tens of thousands of years. Generation after generation, the same patterns repeated. Homo sapiens were restless. We experimented. A stone flake wasn't just a blade. It could be reshaped, sharpened, repurposed. We made smaller, lighter tools, easier to carry on long journeys. We crafted bone needles that allowed us to stitch tight-fitting clothes, sealing warmth against the cold. We invented fishing hooks, snares, and traps, ways to extract food from places our cousins may have overlooked. And then there were the sparks of genius that seemed to come from nowhere. The first carved figurine, the first bone flute, the first bow that bent wood and string into stored energy, launching arrows faster and farther than any hand-thrown spear. Each new tool carried a hidden advantage. It could spread. A clever design discovered by one person didn't die with them. It was copied, improved, passed along networks of people across valleys and rivers. Innovation became contagious. It wasn't just the tool itself, it was the acceleration, the constant layering of one idea on top of another. While others remained steady, we became a storm of invention. And in a changing world, invention is survival. Earth was never a gentle home. Ice advanced, then retreated. Forests turned into deserts. Rivers dried. Coastlines shifted. For most creatures, such changes were disasters. For Homo sapiens, they were challenges. Our cousins were masters of their chosen worlds. Neanderthals thrived in the cold, thick bones, wide chests, and strong muscles built for Europe's icy grip. Denisovans carried genes that let them breathe thin mountain air with ease. The hobbits of Flores adapted perfectly to their tiny island, surviving on limited food. But specialists pay a price. When the world changes, they are trapped in their niche. When the cold forests shrank, Neanderthals lost their hunting grounds. When sea levels rose, the hobbits' island grew smaller and harsher. We, by contrast, were generalists. We were not the strongest, the fastest, or the best suited to one place. But we were endlessly flexible. We learned to fish in rivers, hunt in grasslands, and forage in forests. We made shelters in deserts, carved homes from ice, and crossed open seas in simple rafts. Most importantly, we adapted our minds. If the animals we hunted vanished, we shifted to plants, fish, or smaller prey. If the climate froze, we wrapped ourselves in furs. If it burned, we carried water and built shade. This versatility turned us into the ultimate survivors. Where others were locked into one way of life, we could rewrite the rules again and again. And in an age of shifting climates and constant upheaval, it was not the specialists who endured, it was the shapeshifters. Extinction often sounds final, as if our cousins vanished without leaving a trace. But the truth is far more intimate. They are still with us, inside us. When Homo sapiens spread out of Africa, we didn't just encounter new lands. We encountered other humans. In Europe, we met Neanderthals. In Asia, Denisovans. These were not distant alien beings. They looked enough like us that, in the glow of firelight, they were not so different.
For the meat.
And sometimes, we intermingled. The evidence lies in our DNA. Today, almost every person outside Africa carries fragments of Neanderthal genes, up to 2%. For some, those genes shape the immune system, protecting against disease. In Tibet and the Himalayas, people carry Denisovan DNA that helps them thrive in thin, high-altitude air. This means that though their faces, voices, and cultures are gone, their legacy continues in billions of people alive today. They did not vanish completely. They became part of us. It's a haunting thought. The bloodlines of ancient humans did not end abruptly. They merged. Perhaps in a cave in Europe, or on a windswept plain in Asia, two worlds met not in conflict, but in union. And while we speak of Homo sapiens as the sole survivors, in truth we are hybrids, woven from the strands of many vanished kin. We carry their ghosts in our cells, their whispers written into the code of life. The world our ancestors inherited was unforgiving. The Ice Age gripped the planet, glaciers advancing like slow-moving giants. Winters stretched endlessly, summers grew short and cold. Forests shrank, grasslands dried. The great animals, mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant deer, struggled to survive. And when they fell, the humans who relied on them fell too. For Neanderthals, who depended heavily on big game hunting, this was a disaster. Their strength and skill meant little when herds dwindled. Denisovans, isolated in harsh mountain environments, faced the same relentless pressure. Even the hobbits of Indonesia, trapped on their shrinking island, were cornered by the rising seas. But for us, the shifting world was an opportunity. We hunted many things: small game, fish, birds. We gathered plants and roots. When the climate changed, we adapted our strategies. Where others saw scarcity, we saw alternatives. Yet adaptation wasn't the only force at play. Competition left scars, too. We didn't always share peacefully. Archaeological sites reveal signs of conflict, injuries on Neanderthal bones, weapons fashioned for war. Some researchers believe that as Homo sapiens spread into Europe and Asia, we may have competed directly with our cousins for land, food, and resources. The encounters may not always have been violent, but even without open conflict, the pressure was immense. Larger networks, faster innovation, and more flexible diets meant that we could simply outnumber them, pushing them into smaller and smaller refuges. Survival is rarely fair. The world grew harsher, the rules changed, and only the most adaptable species could endure. For Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others, it was a slow, tightening trap. For us, it was the stage on which we rose. Sometimes extinction doesn't come with fire or violence. Sometimes it comes quietly, with numbers too small to endure. Neanderthals may never have numbered more than a few tens of thousands across all of Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans, even fewer. The hobbits of Flores, perhaps only a few hundred living at once. Compare that to Homo sapiens, whose expanding populations in Africa and beyond may have reached into the millions. A small population is fragile. One harsh winter can cut it in half. One outbreak of disease can sweep through and leave only a handful. If too few children are born, the community weakens with every passing decade. Imagine a Neanderthal band in a frozen valley. Game animals are scarce. A hunter breaks his leg, another falls to illness. The group shrinks. Children are fewer. Each loss weighs heavier because there are so few left to carry the burden. For Homo sapiens, larger numbers meant resilience. Even when some groups fell, others thrived. Knowledge and genes flowed across vast networks, renewing strength where it might otherwise have faded. For our cousins, isolation was a trap. Even if they were skilled, even if they were strong, their numbers could not buffer them against chance. Extinction doesn't always take a catastrophe. Sometimes it takes only time and the slow erosion of fragile populations until the last fire goes out and the silence remains. So why only us? Out of so many branches of the human family tree, why did Homo sapiens endure while the rest withered away? It wasn't because we were the strongest. Neanderthals had bodies that could outmatch ours in raw power. It wasn't because we had the largest brains. Some of our cousins had more volume inside their skulls than we did. And it wasn't simply luck, though chance surely played its role. What set us apart was the combination of traits that, together, became unstoppable. We imagined what wasn't there, turning stories, symbols, and ideas into tools of survival. We built networks that stretched beyond blood, linking tribes into webs of trade, trust, and shared knowledge. We invented restlessly, each generation building upon the last, adapting tools and strategies faster than the world could take them away. We thrived not by specializing, but by flexing, shifting, and bending to whatever challenge the earth threw at us. And perhaps most important, we learned to cooperate at a scale no other human had managed. That ability to bind strangers into communities, to believe in shared myths and goals, became the bedrock of civilizations yet to come. In the end, it wasn't a single gift that made us different. It was the orchestra of many: imagination, culture, adaptability, numbers, and connection. Together, they carried us through the fires of climate change, scarcity, and competition. And so, when the dust settled, only one branch remained, ours. But survival came with a cost. The others are gone. Their faces, their voices, their ways of life, all vanished into the silence of time. We are the last humans, yet within us their echoes remain, in our blood, in our bones, in the questions we still ask. Was it destiny that only Homo sapiens survived? Or was it a fragile accident, a roll of history's dice that might have fallen another way? We will never know for certain, but one truth endures: to be human is to be the inheritor of all who came before us, and the sole guardian of a legacy that almost ended with them. If you've made it this far into our journey through deep time, you're part of a rare group of people who truly wonder about our place in the human story. If you'd like to keep exploring the mysteries of evolution, ancient worlds, and the fragile line that brought us here, join us here on Lithinix. Subscribe, share this with someone who loves history and science, and help us bring more forgotten stories of our planet back to life. Because to understand why only we survived is to understand who we really are.